I was married when I entered prison, and I had 3 daughters. They were told that I was dead while I was incarcerated. So, reentry was scary to me because I knew that I would have to somehow convince these little people that I've loved them this whole time and that I had a place in their life, a good, positive place in their life. We prayed hard. The women in the faith-based dorm surrounded me. We prayed hard for months, for years, about this reunion and what it would look like. Their father divorced me while I was incarcerated and remarried. So when I got out, I had to wait 3 months to see them, but finally a meeting was scheduled. It was going to be with a parental facilitator, counselor, so she could overlook it, and if the children had a traumatic experience, could intervene. But God's so good, because when I got locked up, the baby was 13 months old. She never really knew me. And so when the kids were released and they're coming around the corner, the baby's the one leading the pack, and she's running to me with her arms outstretched, and it was just something you would see in a movie, something I dreamed about. It could never happen. It could never happen, not realistically. That's a fairy tale, you know. These kids aren't gonna know me. But they did. They did. Somehow, the Lord had seared me in their hearts, and they knew me. It's been a slow process, but I just work hard every day to make sure that whatever I say, I do. If I promise something, I follow through with it. I am making the right choices for them. I want them to see that they are the most important people in my life and that they don't ever have to worry about me going away again, because there's no way that I'm gonna lose what they're trusting me with, and that's their little hearts.
When I was first incarcerated, my youngest daughter was 6 years old and my oldest daughter was 12. When I came home, my youngest daughter was 12 and my oldest daughter was 18. My mother and father had been caring for them while I was away, and they did a really good job. But when I first came home, I would encounter things in their behavior that I didn't quite agree with, and it was kind of an adjustment to kind of retake over the reins of being a parent. My children, both my girls, would go to my parents before they would go to me, and it was a little hurtful at first, but I had to understand that for the past 6 years, that's what they had been doing. That's what they were accustomed to. And so it took a couple of years before my daughters, they would come to me with little things, and it was so sweet because I realized that they were starting to look at me more as their mother and their caregiver. And that was just a really good moment for me. I don't think my daughters realized just how special it was.
Coming home to my mom raising my children at this time and me trying to come back into that position posed a few challenges because my kids were sometimes saying mommy here and mommy there. So you didn't know if it was mommy or granny, and that was sometimes kind of sore, but I had to learn how to adjust to that and give them time to readjust to me being there and me getting back on schedule, doing like doctor appointments, to school, because all of that was a period of transition. But it was a challenge because when you're used to doing that and you think you're just going to go back and do that, it doesn't just happen that easily, especially if you have a record, and some places may not want to let you just take over guardianship and certain responsibilities that easily. There were a few things that I was unable to do when I first got back home, like jump right back into the PTA. I love the PTA. But I could not, because one of the things that they did was online with applying to be a volunteer, and they asked you if you're an ex-felon. But I did, I had a day where I broke down. And I called the head corporate office and I asked, could I speak with someone about that? Because a lot of participation with keeping the community together between parents and teachers did not build, because a lot of people in the community really had a felony and they didn't participate because they couldn't answer that question or didn't want to share that. So I made it a goal of mine to go and speak to the right people and see about maybe they can have a medium about that, because it really bothered me to not be able to connect with my kids' educational and extracurricular life at school coming back home, because I had a felony. And I wasn't able to do some of those things because, again, the stipulations of my background. But I was able to establish some relationships with some of the people there, and they let me kind of work with them, you know, to build my relationship and trust with them. And so therefore, it got better over a period of time, but it did take some patience. So I would encourage you, don't go home expecting to make up for the lost time with that child. What you can do, and what I did, is I asked God to show me every day how I can build a new, better, stronger relationship with my children. One, because they experienced trauma based on my choices. And they did have some disappointment and some lack of trust and some anger with me. And so I had to be patient with them moving forward. But I will encourage you, if you just allow them to release theirs as you release yours, it will grow. You will grow back to be the family, the healthy parent and children relationship that you want to have.
With the contact with the family, at the end, it really was just my mom and my daughter at the end. My son, he still has issues. We're trying to get him back. And it's just, God's got it. He knows what he's doing. I don't. And that hurts. I miss my boys so much. It's like the hardest thing. It's like while I was in there, you know, I would just break down and God. I was like, you know what? I had to give them to God. The hardest thing for a mom to do is to let go of her kids. It hurt, but it felt so good because I can't do for him what God can do. And you're always throwing God down my throat. No, I'm not. You ask how I'm strong, how I make it. And that's how I make it. I mean, that's how I made it through. I didn't make it through. But he's coming around a little bit, you know, months will go by, and then now he keeps in touch with my daughter. So, you know, I find out how he's doing through her, which is good. I've seen my daughter, I've seen my parents. I haven't been able to see my boy because he's just... One day I will, though. And that hurts the most.
In my relationship, it was really hard in the very beginning when I first came out with my daughters. Because one of them didn't trust me at all, which is my youngest. We would get into arguments, you know, about things that weren't really important to me, because I would tell her, well, I'm a changed person. I'm not that same person anymore. But to her, it was a big deal. To her, it was like, well, you've been to prison twice. How do you expect me to believe you? And you know, to say, okay, you're being honest here today. You know, you're not going to go back to drinking. You're not going to be going back to the drugs. You're not going to go sell dope. That was a hard one. You know, I just kept telling her that I'm a different person today, you know, and that I just had to walk, and she would have to just look at how I walk and what I did in my life, and have to trust me in that, and trust God that it's different today, you know. I know it was a struggle for her. because she was left alone. The first time I was incarcerated, she was 12 and 13 and 14, so it was really hard. And then when I went back into prison, she was already in her 20s. So to her, it was very unstable. And now this time, it's like I'm on fire for God, and I'm like, come on, let's go to church, or, let's do this and let's do that together as a family. And she would keep her distance, and she would say, no, I'm not gonna do it today, Mom, because I'm afraid, and I don't want my children hanging out with you because I'm afraid that you're not being honest. So I said, okay. I respected her, so then I just continued. Now it's been 2 years, and this year finally she's like, I love you, Mom, and the kids come over on the weekends, and it's not perfect. Now and then there'll be times where she'll remember something, or we'll be sitting down in dinner talking, and something would just trigger it, and remember the time where, and I'd be like, oh, do we have to go there, but I just let her. Today I'm able to sit down and just listen, and I have to listen to her because I want her to be able to express herself, and I need to humble myself to be in her shoes and think about what she went through, and it's not all about me anymore.
I hadn't seen my kids in almost 2 years, and even then I was only getting to see them 3 days, once a year, and that's if they came to Texas. It didn't really go the way that I had planned, because I went in there thinking, the judge is gonna side with me, and he's gonna make my kids get on a plane, and they're gonna come to Texas during the summer, and it didn't go that way. The judge pretty much said to me that, my kids were at an age where he couldn't just put them on a plane. The judge did say, if you should go to Kentucky to see your kids. I don't know why I didn't think that was an option before. I think it had a lot to do with the relationship that I had with my ex. And so there was that fear and kind of still that stubbornness and wanting things my way. And I felt like, well, I'm a good person now. I deserve this. So long story short, my husband and I traveled to Kentucky to go see the boys, my kids. And I was kind of nervous because I didn't know how we were gonna be welcomed by my ex-husband and his new wife. But I tell you that as soon as we got there, they were standing outside. They were welcoming us. A couple of minutes later, we're in a Jeep going through the hills of Kentucky. It's the stepmom and my son and me and ex-husband and husband in the front, and we're looking at deer stands. And it was amazing. Like, it was so awesome. That night, she's making dinner for us. Her family's coming over to meet me. Everybody's just hanging out, and the kids are there, and my son is, he's showing me all around his room. And there was a really precious moment when the whole time that I was incarcerated, I wrote my kids every week and would send them cards and the coloring pages and have somebody draw something for them. And I never heard back from them, not one time. And so my son takes me down in his room, and he's showing me all these trophies and these award certificates, and it's just this drawer of his treasures. And as he's showing me all this stuff, he pulls out this folder and he opens it up and he's like, Mom, remember this? And it was every single thing that I had sent him the entire time that I was incarcerated. And he had it in this drawer with his treasures. I had no idea that he even got that stuff. And it had to be important enough for him to keep it it had been 5 years at that point. And so it meant a lot to me because I even had to look at it. And had I not seen my TDCJ number on it, I would have not remembered because it had been so long. And, I was sending them everything I could, every chance I got. And so that meant a lot to me to know that he did get that stuff and he did keep it. And just because I didn't hear back from them doesn't mean that, I wasn't there. I wasn't forgotten.